The progressive revolution doesn't stop when the live show ends. Join the home of progressives and become a TYT member today. Click the link below.
Right now, some of the most high-profile races in this midterm season are still up in the air, with ballots being counted and in many cases recounts basically assured at this point. And while this is happening, Republicans, including the president and the governor of Florida, concerning his own race, mind you, are alleging that there is voter fraud going on, although they have yet to give any evidence whatsoever about how that's actually happening. So first I wanna let you know about how close these races actually are, why this big thing is going on, why legal challenges are going forward, crazy conspiratorial tweets are being tweeted. So over in Arizona, Representative Kristen Sinema is ahead of Representative Martha McSally by a mere 2,000 votes. I think right now that's actually more around 9,000 votes, but it's still pretty close. Florida Governor Rick Scott leads incumbent Senator Bill Nelson by about 15,000 votes for the Senate seat. I believe that's 0.18%, which is very, very close indeed. Still in Florida, Representative Ron DeSantis, whom the AP declared the winner in his race, is ahead of Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum by about 35,000 votes in the Florida governor's race. And nearby in Georgia, Secretary of State Brian Kemp is ahead of former State House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams by 63,000 votes in the governor's race there. So understand that votes are still being counted. These are provisional ballots that are being confirmed or mail-in ballots that are arriving. We don't normally really care about those votes that much because generally the difference between the two top candidates is large enough that those would not be able to swing the result. But in these cases where you have a number of races that are within a fraction of 1 percentage point, they are potentially enough to actually swing it. As we saw in Arizona, where Kristen Sinema, who was down at one point, has now taken the lead with some of those other ballots coming in. At the same time, some of these have already been called for recounts. As Stacey Abrams is calling for a recount. There's still counting going on in Florida. And even though technically Andrew Gillum did concede, he's now saying that he wants every vote to be counted, which seems reasonable since we live in a democracy. Despite all of this, we're gonna have some accusations of fraud and things like that. But are you at all surprised that we were a little bit depressed on election day? Some of these races are the ones we were watching the closest. And in pretty much every case since the election day, further developments have been beneficial to the Democrats, whether it's flipped a district or just brought it closer.
Yeah, and no, I was surprised by one, just because of the size of it, which was Connecticut. I thought Ned Lamont had already lost, and it turns out he came back and won. And so, but you guys have to understand something that we emphasize on every election night, so it's not like we're doing it now because of the story, that when people are coming from behind, they're not actually coming from behind. Exactly. It's the counting that's coming from behind. They all voted at the same time, right? So now, I give you a perfect case in Florida. So that's the one that's the most contentious. Now they've, Trump of course has a wild conspiracy theory about it, which we'll get to in a second. But they say, well, this is so crazy. Most of the votes coming in from Broward County, which is the latest in counting, are almost all coming in for the Democrats, Gillum and Bill Nelson. Well, that's true. The Gillum is getting 68% of the vote in Broward County, and Nelson's getting 69.1% of the vote in Broward County. You know why? Because Broward County is really Democratic. Other parts of Florida are more Republican, but Broward County is heavily Democratic. So does that percentage match up with previous elections? That's an important question. If in other elections, Broward County comes in at 50% Democratic, and all of a sudden here they're coming in at 68 and 69, you go, whoa, wait a minute, that's a problem, okay? That's where are they getting these votes? Why is that so out of sync? So let's look at previous elections. Oh, look at that. In Broward County, in the presidential vote in 2012, 67% Democratic. Then in 2016, 66% Democratic, right along similar lines. And in the last governor's race in 2014, 68% Democratic, exactly where they have it right now. So coming in at 68, 69% in favor of Gillum and Nelson is exactly where you would expect Broward County to be in. So it's just a matter of when they count. It isn't like, all the vote, most of the votes coming, 7 out of 10 of the votes coming in are Democratic. Yeah, that's because it's Broward County. If it was a Republican county, 7 out of 10 votes would come in favor of the Republicans.
I didn't expect that live on the show you would prove that Democrats have been cheating in multiple elections going back many years.
If that's the case, then Republicans have been cheating in Alabama for a long time.
But don't you agree that we need to tell our candidates not to concede in these
Mm-hmm.
close races, because it does feed into a media narrative that's challenging for us. If you concede and then you unconcede, obviously it doesn't change the substance of every vote ought to be counted, but nevertheless.
Yeah, Joe, that's exactly right. There's like this mad rush for concessions. Like, oh, you have to say it right away. You have to say it, otherwise it's not civil. First of all, we're still having that conversation with President Trump in office about civility and how quickly you concede. Second of all, it doesn't matter. It's just optics. Joe's exactly right. In reality, does it have any legal force? No. Let's say that somebody won by 12 points, but they accidentally conceded. Would they be like, sorry, you conceded, the other guy's the governor? No, it means nothing at all, right? So, but I mean, especially in Florida, why would you concede too early?
Exactly.
And it only helps the Republican framing. Look, I know they're trying to do the right thing, but yes, these ballots oftentimes come in late, and especially in Democratic districts, they will very likely swing towards Democrats. In fact, on election night, we emphasized over and over again about Florida in specific. Go back and look at that tape, and you can if you're a member, tyt.com/join to become a member. You get all of our coverage, and you will see that I said Broward County has not come in. It has the lowest percentage of the vote that has been counted in Florida, and Broward County is the most heavily Democratic county. And so this race is not quite over yet, we said throughout the night. So when Gillum conceded with about 1 point, we assumed that it was over, that Broward had mainly stopped counting. As it turns out, they're really slow in counting. And if Republicans say, hey, they should have been quicker, I agree, they should have been quicker. If they say they should have been quicker, so let's just not count the votes. No, hell no.
And then there's a version of that, like saying, I wish that we were totally wrapped up on election day is fine. I wish historically that California was faster at counting votes. There's just some areas that aren't. But then there's a version of that doesn't make any sense. Rudy Giuliani tweeted that after the first county is done counting votes, no votes should be taken from any other county. What are you talking about? That's insanity. Then all you gotta do is get one little rural county with 7 people and they just rush through and count it really fast. And then, hey, we got 100% of the vote.
Well, two could play that game if you want. We could do that in blue states or in all the states.
Madness.
Just hurry up and count any Democratic county immediately. In fact, invent a county of like 3 people. Okay, we all vote Democrat. That's it. The state's ours. Okay. Preposterous. I mean, they say that with a straight face on television, right?
Or as straight of a face as Rudy Giuliani can have. So why don't we turn to some of the assertions of voter fraud? As we show you this video, which is going to be of Donald Trump, I want you to look carefully and log all of the evidence provided for his claims as we roll this.
If you look at Broward and Palm Beach to a lesser extent, if you look at Broward County, they have had a horrible history. And if you look at the person, in this case a woman, involved, she has had a horrible history. And all of a sudden, they're finding votes out of nowhere. And Rick Scott, who won by, it was close, but he won by a comfortable margin. Every couple of hours, it goes down a little bit. And then you see the people, and they were involved with that fraud of the fake dossier, the phony dossier. And I guess I hear they were somehow involved or work with the GPS fusion people who have committed. I mean, you look at what they've done. You look at the dishonesty. Look. There's bad things have gone on in Broward County, really bad things. She's been to court. She's had a lot of problems. She's lost. I'd say this, he easily won, but every hour it seems to be going down. I think that people have to look at it very, very cautiously.
Okay, so I really wish that if you're a conservative and you're watching this, whether you think that he's being honest or whether you accept that he is lying and you don't care, wouldn't you want a president who's gonna put a little bit more effort into his lying? All he says is, if you look at this, if you look at that, bad things are happening. He didn't give any specifics whatsoever. Now, he did say they're coming up with votes. He has no evidence of that. They have votes, you can confirm all of them, and we, I'm sure, all advocate for a verifiable paper trail that makes it easy to confirm every single vote.
Whoa, John. I mean, look, man. Hey, if in Broward County all of a sudden we got magical votes, of course we want actual votes. It's preposterous.
Look at this tweet. So Rick Scott was up by 50,000 votes on election day. Now they found many votes, and he's only up by 15,000. The Broward effect. How come they never find Republican votes? Well, here is the thing. It sounds like about 32% of the votes they found have been Republican votes. It just leans Democratic, you moron. You can't count, there's no more specificity or evidence provided in a presidential tweet at this point than some random person who's gonna respond on Twitter when we post this video later on.
Let me offer the bright side. There's some who think that we're spiraling into an even scarier moment where Trump is being emboldened. I have a different take on it. I think this is an example of Trump actually being on the ropes. We won big on Tuesday, and perhaps on Tuesday night it wasn't so clear, but I think with the passage of a few days, it's clear that we won pretty well. And I think he's scared. And I think as he becomes more scared, he's gonna act more erratically. So I think there's an interpretation that we can all take from this that we're starting to win.
Yeah, so let me address some of the things that Trump said. He said they're getting the votes out of nowhere. No, not true. They're counting them. And he's like, they found the votes. No, they didn't find the votes. They're counting them. The votes were there the whole time. Now, to be fair, and look, we're not like the other guys. We don't make up stuff, and we actually care about what's right and reasonable and legal, right? So a judge just ruled in Florida, this is breaking news, that Broward County has to explain how many people voted, right, and how many they have counted by Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is, I think that's a perfectly reasonable ruling by the judge. I don't know if the judge is Republican or Democrat or appointed by Republicans or Democrats, I don't care.
Appointed by Jeb Bush.
Okay, that's okay, no problem at all, okay? So Friday 7 p.m. when they voted on Tuesday, that's a long time. It's fair to say, hey, listen, we need to verify, we need a little bit of transparency here, or we need a lot of transparency. How many people voted? Now, if it was a Republican county, I would want to know how many people voted. And if they were holding the votes, if Chris Kobach was holding the votes and was like, I'm not gonna tell you, I'd be like, what, right? So no, they gotta let people know how many people voted and when are you gonna stop, when are you gonna finish the count? Those are reasonable questions. What is not reasonable is saying, they're just coming out of nowhere, the votes, they're popping up, right? And they're cheating. Wait a minute, Rick Scott is saying that there's fraud. Okay, then they asked him, logical next question, reporters asked, oh, that's amazing. What's your evidence? He's like, oh, I don't have any, but I don't know, they're taking a long time to count. No, that's not a thing.
Get ready, he's gonna make less and less and less sense as we put him more and more on the ropes.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, in this area, I would love, like we didn't have a Secretary of State running in, controlling the election he's running in, but Rick Scott is deciding that, hey, I'm the governor, I can get involved if I want. I can send people down there. There's reports that Ron DeSantis is sending people as well. That's fine as long as they're not sending thugs basically to intimidate the people into not counting the vote anymore. But theoretically, Donald Trump, he's a guy who admires dictators all around the world. Could he take a more direct hand if some of these races don't go his way? I don't know, but on Twitter, he did tweet this today. Just out in Arizona, signatures don't match. Electoral corruption, call for a new election? We must protect our democracy. So Kristen Sinema looks like she's gonna win at this point. So maybe to protect democracy, he needs to invalidate the results of an election. Now, if this was not America, if it was not Donald Trump, and you heard about that happening somewhere else in the world, what would you think about that development? Would you think that that's a good thing? And here, he seems to be indicating that that's what he wants to do.
Wait, would you like to do a new election in Arizona, Florida, and Georgia? Oh, you wouldn't like to do a new election in the places that you claim you won. Interesting how that works. So it's of course preposterous, but there's one more important thing here. And
what if we did a revote of 2016 right now?
Yeah, why not? I mean, look,
Can we do 2000?
Hey, Trump said there was voter fraud in 2016. He said there were 3 to 5 million illegal votes. I mean, that is unbelievable. That's way more than even the absurd allegations in Arizona or otherwise. Maybe we should redo 2016. It's not my standard, it's the Trump standard.
Let's do the primaries too, though.
Yeah. Okay, so now look, to both John's point about how little homework he does and to Joe's point about how frazzled he is, he's trying to connect the Democratic Senate candidate, Bill Nelson's lawyer, Mark Elias, to Fusion GPS, who did the dossier. Now, are they really connected? No, Elias represented Hillary Clinton. So he's saying, since that lawyer represented Hillary Clinton who commissioned the Fusion GPS thing, I'm gonna bring up the dossier out of nowhere and somehow connect it to this case. That's a dossier that says terrible things about Donald Trump. If there was a dossier like that on me, I think I'd know the people who commissioned it. Instead, he's like GPS Fusion. That's not the name. Like, that's amazing. I mean, don't you care like that he's not mentally competent. Okay, I mean, if it was just one slip up, you say, oh, it's no big deal. People slip up all the time, I slip up all the time. But no, he doesn't do any homework, he doesn't do any preparation. And the GPS Fusion people are there. They're not there, they're not connected to this at all, and it's Fusion GPS.
Well, super fast, you also don't know for sure that he's not lying. He was asked this morning about comments made by Michelle Obama. Said, I'm not familiar with it. So the reporter explained a little bit. He started to answer, and then he brought up something else Michelle Obama had said. He said he wasn't aware of it, but he was lying about it.
Yeah, of course. So last thing here, and this is the most important and serious part. So I'm gonna go to graphics 55 and 56 here. So back in 2000, they stopped the recount in Florida, famously so. Two things happened. One, originally these thugs came in and started banging on the doors of people doing the recount down in Miami-Dade. They were also trying to threaten Broward County. So the same Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach were at play in the Bush versus Gore, Florida situation. And they made them stop the recount because of this mob that had formed outside of their offices. And then eventually, since they stopped recounting, they never got to finish the count. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in the most political decision in Supreme Court history, they literally said in the decision, this doesn't count for anything else. We don't want it to be precedent, because they knew that they were bending the rules to make Bush president. They said you should not recount Florida. Whatever you do, do not count the vote. Well, here, it's not gonna happen this time around, okay? We cannot allow that to happen under any circumstances. Currently, the Gillum race is under 50,000 difference. So what that means, 50,000 vote difference. That means a manual recount is legally necessary, okay? So they must do, an automatic recount, a machine recount.
Machine, yes.
They must do a machine recount. The other race, Bill Nelson versus Rick Scott, is under 25,000. It's at 18,000 right now, vote difference. That means that a manual hand recount is legally necessary. They must do that recount. It's not a matter of our guy winning or their guy winning. If it is those thresholds, and if it was reversed and the Republicans said, hey, there should be a recount, and there's been other instances where we have said that. Yes, absolutely they should do a recount. So we're not gonna let him get away with it again. Here, let me show you the picture of these folks that went down there and formed a mob to intimidate the people counting in Miami-Dade, and it worked. They stopped counting because of this mob. And then here's a famous picture of this same guys, the next picture, where journalists figured out who they were. And they were all GOP, turns out, not real people, not concerned citizens as they claimed. They were GOP lobbyists, consultants, staffers. It was a fake mob. And it was sent by the Republican Party to intimidate people into not counting the vote. That's not gonna happen this time. So if they start these shenanigans and they say, even though legally we must recount, we're not going to. Well, we can send people too. And we're not gonna be a mob, and we're not gonna do anything physical. But I mean, how many people do we need? Do we need thousands? Do we need millions? But we will show up if they do something outrageous and say that they are not going to count the vote. There will be hell to pay. That you should shake the rafters, okay? Not physical, we're not the right wing, we're not violent, but as many human beings as possible, surrounding as many buildings as possible, to say you will count that vote under any and all circumstances. Not recounting it is not acceptable under any circumstance. So I think I'm clear about that. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.